Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm Karen Weber. Today we are joined by two remarkable leaders shaping the intersection of sports, business, and university operations. Our first guest, Dr. Erik Monday, serves as Executive Vice President for Finance and Administration at the University of Kentucky. Since 2012, he's played a pivotal role in managing the university's financial and administrative strategies, and he's got some good ones. He supports the president's office and ensures the smooth operation of one of the nation's leading public institutions. Erik from UK, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, Dr. Weaver. Glad to be here.
Joining him is Erik Judson, Chief Executive Officer of JMI Sports. As the founder and strategic visionary behind the company, Erik has guided JMI Sports since 2006 in building partnerships that span athletics, multimedia rights, campus marketing, and sport facility development. Before launching the firm, he helped lead the creation of San Diego's Petco Park during his tenure with the Padres, drawing on his experience both as a player and a professional with a background in economics and business. And he played for the Philadelphia Phillies organization. So that's the most important thing of all. Erik from JMI Sports, welcome to the podcast.
Dr. Weaver, it's a pleasure being here and love the Philly fandom.
Absolutely. Loyal, true. Yes. All right. So Erik from Kentucky, where you and I talked a lot last fall about the changes that might be coming in college athletics. We are now 1 year into this, and Kentucky made one of the biggest pronouncements that I have seen so far, and that is Champion Blue LLC. Talk with us about that.
Yeah, Karen, super excited to be on with you again. And Champions Blue LLC was our solution here at Kentucky to try to run towards what was coming with the House settlement, what was coming in this changing dynamic. So a couple, I think, of the high level benefits. One is we know and we knew we needed some more outside expertise to help the president, to help the athletics director, to help the leadership team. So we created this board that includes 3 outside experts that is really pushing us and challenging us to think about what's next. And it's not just from a college standpoint, but what are we seeing? One of our outside experts comes from the horse industry. And what are they doing as it relates to fan engagement and premium spaces and so on? And then 2 others, of course, as well. But that's one of the benefits. Secondly, we see it as a platform for us to move at a more rapid pace. I think one of the criticisms of large, bulky universities is we can't move and accelerate like others. And so we have to do that. And 3, it's this framework for us to engage in higher level partnerships. We are a big believer in that. You probably recall our conversation, Karen, last time. And so hardwiring some of those relationships, could it be a platform for maybe things we're not ready for today, but are open to in the future? Maybe that is as well. But really, outside expertise, acceleration, and the ability to think about our partnerships at a higher level.
Okay, so that makes sense. So one of the things that you and I talked about last year when you were forming this was, of course, Kentucky has a fantastic medical school, fantastic medical campus. How did the formation of Champions Blue impact that and vice versa?
Yeah, very much so. So I'm actually in my healthcare office right now and down at the healthcare part of our campus. And so what we did at the University of Kentucky is we were asked to consider to expand beyond Lexington, where we are here in the Commonwealth, and to look at Eastern Kentucky and other health systems and hospitals. We built about a almost $6 billion health system now. It's about $6 billion of our $9 billion enterprise, including athletics and our higher education business. And so how we did that is we built some individual LLCs for those hospitals. So we kind of leaned in on that to understand, is that something that could help us in our athletic department as we think about that future? We're in the midst of that transition right now. July 1st of 2026 will fully transition to Champions Blue. Within that, Karen, we also are launching a new ERP system. So we're going to Workday. That's going to be a component of all of those blues and our athletics department. So allow us to have some better technology, make the mundane easier, if you will, so people can use their expertise to think about new business opportunities, to think about player development, to think about how we take care of the student athlete at a higher level as well.
Okay. So, Eric from JMI Sports, how is JMI Sports approaching opportunities for deeper engagement and investment with its partners, and specifically the University of Kentucky?
Well, it's wonderful to talk about University of Kentucky as our partner because we just celebrated 10 years and we just finalized an agreement to add 15 more years to it.
Wow.
So the longest, deepest relationship. And I think that's really important as a foundational element here because Mitch and his incredible athletic department have been wonderful partners. And I think we've helped each other grow the business, enhance the business. We've grown revenue tremendously there on the multimedia rights side. And we've added a bunch of new assets. We've been extremely supportive of all the incredible things that Mitch has accomplished on the athletic side. But at the University of Kentucky, we also play a role with Dr. Monday and President Capilouto in thinking more broadly. And as he's saying, looking forward and running to it rather than being concerned about what's going to take place. So in this evolving partnership, we've done a couple things. Clearly, the multimedia rights business is core to this, but as you're seeing across the country, new assets are coming into play. Field logos, a lot of talk about jersey patches right now. University of Kentucky years ago gave us the rights as part of our original deal to sell the naming rights to Commonwealth Stadium. Everyone thought that would be a terrible thing to change. No one talks about that now. Kroger Field was the first naming rights deal in the SEC, and it's widely embraced. Now at Rupp Arena, what an iconic building that is. Rupp Arena at Central Bank Center is now naming of an iconic a place where basketball has been played here at Kentucky. But those are revenue enhancements and streams that are essential to the growth of the athletic business. But beyond that, and I know Dr. Monday will tell you this, he sees us as a business partner that can reach beyond just the traditional multimedia rights. We've got facility development experience. We're engaged right now helping them study ways to grow revenue at Kroger Field. Dr. Monday and I were very involved with the renovation of Rupp Arena and coming up with new ways to enhance revenue there and pay for essentially increased lease payments. So we've got a ton of expertise. I've got an incredible team with professional and collegiate experience, and we do an awful lot. But I think very importantly, if we don't have that expertise, we want to be a partner with the University of Kentucky to find the best and brightest in the industry to do that.
Okay.
Aligned interests, very important. Expanding beyond just multimedia rights, I think, is very important. But most importantly, it's about a deep, trusted, and transparent relationship where we're kind of pulling in the same direction and taking on this incredibly dynamic environment.
Yeah, it's remarkable. You said you have a 10-year celebration and 15 more to come. That's an unusual partnership in this day and age in college athletics. So let me ask you to build a little bit on that. Talk a little bit about what, for my students in particular, are not as familiar with college sports. Maybe they work in another aspect of campus life. What do you mean by multimedia rights? Explain what that facet is.
There are some incredible icons in the business. Clyde Lear, Jim Host in Lexington, got in the business originally to take operational responsibilities of the university radio shows, to take on those responsibilities and sell sponsorships for them. Now that has grown into something far more complex and quite frankly, fulfilling for the partnerships. So all commercial relationships with the University of Kentucky athletic department and campus come through JMI Sports. So if there's someone who wants to do business with us, someone who wants to advertise or market their company, either the brand or their services, I've got 15 people sitting in Lexington, Kentucky, who are business partners of the University of Kentucky to manage that. So signs on walls, radio production, content, video content. We've just recently launched Big Blue United, which is a subscription-based opportunity for people to get deeper into the Kentucky athletic department. We've got the NIL business that we're also helping manage with the University of Kentucky. We have 200 partnerships just at that school alone. So the brands that want to invest in name, image, and likeness are most likely going to be our brands because they're already invested in the University of Kentucky. Multimedia rights is really a catch-all for any opportunity to advance the business interests of the university and their athletic department.
Okay, so let me tie that back to what your work is at Kentucky, Eric. You're the chief financial officer. These are a lot of contracts. A lot of decisions have to be made that impact the university's brand and reputation. How do you see that from your office? How does your board see that? Talk a little bit about that relationship.
Sure. And Karen, when you think about the history of that, I remember working with university presidents in my past where we'd say we were going to put a fence around athletics, right?
Right.
We were going to do relationships throughout athletics. And about 11, 12 years ago, our president, Dr. Capilouto, said if we're going to go to the market and look for a new partner when we think about media rights and all the things Erik Judson just described, we wanted to think about the entire enterprise, more of an enterprise relationship. That's a term we're using, I think, more and more now in American higher education. And so we were maybe on a little bit of the early adopter. We weren't the first, but we may have been in that first quarter, second quarter, if you will. And so from the very beginning, we set that up with Erik Judson and Paul Archie and Tom Stoltz and the whole team at JMI Sports. And so we started at the right place. And so as we go through those, some are more athletic related decisions, right? I think the best athletic director in the country, Mitch Barnard, who's been with us for over 2 decades here, that's more maybe his decision as we think about something within the venue, if you will. And then if we're thinking about our relationship with Fidelity and UK Invest, one of the great programs we offer for all of our students here, we think about our beverage contract with Coca-Cola. Those are more enterprise wide. And what's awesome is we have Erik Judson and his team around that table from the very beginning. We view this relationship, our partnership, as so integral to how we do things. When we think of something that may be more creative or we see it in another place and we're thinking about it, Erik's the first call. And so we're bringing them in at so they co-create with us, which we have really seen to produce some amazing outcomes.
I think
Karen,
that's what
I just want to add one thing to that importantly, because, and I said this a moment ago, my mentor is Larry Lucchino. I hope he gets in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame someday. He was the person who brought baseball back downtown in Baltimore and San Diego, and then brought some championships to Boston. But when I started with him as a kind of a young professional, he'd ask me a question, and if I tried to make up the answer, I was in trouble. He said that the best way to respond if you don't know is that I don't know, but I'm going to get the answer. So when Dr. Monday asks us a question, I'm happy to share all of our expertise. We've got 20 partnerships around the country. We've got schools that are very different, and there's all kinds of learnings from that. But if you ask me a question and we don't know the answer, boy, we've got a lot of resources and relationships in the industry to go out and help them find those answers. So we're not trying to gather more opportunities necessarily just for JMI Sports. We're trying to enhance the partnership and be a good business partner to the University of Kentucky. And that might mean, going outside of our organization to find the best and brightest and someone who can deliver the results UK needs.
I appreciate you both telling me how innovative and early on you decided on this relationship. Erik and Monday, I really appreciate the nod to enterprise. I don't hear many college presidents talking that way about creating these multidimensional financial partnerships around education and athletics. What recommendations might you have for presidents to start thinking a little bit more outside the box?
Yeah. Well, one is I think there is a burning platform, right? So we talked a little bit about this before, Dr. Weaver, but when you think about a comprehensive institution, maybe it's got higher ed and just athletics, right? Some have healthcare as well. We're under stress and strain across all 3 business lines, if we want to use that term. I think that's unusual. I would argue it maybe is the first time in decades and decades. So I do think there's that burning platform, and it's not about the money, right? It's got to be about the principles. So we use a strategy when we think about our enterprise relationships where we look at the program and principles. What are we trying to achieve? What is the problem we're trying to solve? What are we trying to do to advance Kentucky? And then the term of the agreement, the amount of the return you get, the amount of the investment, those always have to follow that program and principles. One of our program and principles when we thought about a relationship with JMI Sports was we really needed a new baseball stadium. That was one of our goals, one of our outcomes, one of our principles. And Erik Judson and JMI Sports came to the table and made an investment in our baseball stadium, as you want to think about a P3, outside investment, private investment in an institution that has led to a wonderful venue that we have open today. So I think from a presidential standpoint, how do you look at your land, your brand, your demand? How do you think about the private sector? And I do believe, and I would encourage anyone, that we do have an obligation to look. We don't have an obligation to act. There's certain things that we consider, that we put out on the street or that we study, that we don't do. But how do you think about these large relationships where there's investment from the private sector in a hardwire? When we think about partnerships of the next 50 years in American higher education, it's going to be less with government and more with the private sector.
Interesting.
So we're running to that because, the University of Kentucky, our state government is a huge supporter of the university. They have been a great partner, but it's 4 cents out of every dollar. Now, is it the most important 4 cents? Of course it is. And we don't generate those other 96. But do we think that 4 cents is going to likely grow with all the needs that they have? No, we're going to be expected to generate more, have a higher ROI to show that students are out there earning and making a difference and are successful, that our patients are not coming back to the hospital, that the passion of an athletics department sustains a commonwealth and a state. And so we're going to have to look to the private sector, I think, more to help us accelerate things, to help us to achieve these big problems.
And how does JMI Sports welcome that challenge, that opportunity to work with a school like Kentucky?
Well, they do make requests sometimes that I have to sit back and pause a little bit, like when they made that request for the investment in the baseball park, which was a threshold issue for them. But kind of, I know we're going to talk a little bit later about private equity or private investment in college athletics. The term that I like to use is partner capital. We are their partner, and we brought that capital. That's private money, private dollars coming in, but it's tied to so much more than just one investment. So I made an investment in that ballpark for the 10 years, and now it's led to another 15 years because we've demonstrated an ability to be an incredible partner to them. Okay, so that was an investment that I didn't need, 20% return year over year and my money back after 5 years. It was a long-term investment into the partnership, which now has grown into something that I think really should be a model across the country. I talked to a number of other universities about this, aligning interests, giving the university the flexibility to navigate these waters, not be rigid in a contract where we're arguing over what dollar goes where, giving the university the vast majority of every new incremental dollar so their decisions immediately go to their bottom line, both from a cost standpoint and a revenue standpoint, because that's really important here because I know there's a lot of noise out there about increased revenue and all. We've got to manage costs better.
Yeah.
And I think Dr. Monday will tell you that side of the equation still needs a lot more work. We need to do things to be more, I'd say, cognizant of those impacts. You just can't grow revenues and have costs chase it, because then you haven't advanced the viability of the business. Any way we can align with the interest to achieve their goals at Kentucky or any of our properties needs us, I think, to be very responsive.
Okay, so that's a really good point to launch into this whole discussion about private equity coming into college athletics, right? And the dominant narrative that I hear so far: cut costs, cut costs, cut costs, get a return on investment 3, 5, 10 years down the road. And that's what people want. They want in and they want out. How viable, Erik, from JMI Sports, how do you think that might work in higher education? Are you a fan, or you are more like skeptical? Yeah. Right. How about from Kentucky's viewpoint, Erik? What do you see in this space?
I think I would echo a lot of what Erik Judson has described. And let me zoom out just for a second, Dr. Weaver, and how, just from a pure financial standpoint, most universities can go seek capital, whether it's taxable or tax exempt, even in today's marketplace, between 4 and 5%. When you think about private capital, to Erik's example, where we're looking for an exact number on a facility. So we built 15 residence halls. The 15th is actually under construction, over $500 million now, right? And what we're seeing is 6 to 8% type of returns, if you will. Let's just call it an interest rate for the lack of a different term. So we're 4 to 5. Now we're at 6 or 8. Right. And then if we get into the private equity, I think all of us have had various conversations, whether they're formal or informal. I've not seen any conversations where the numbers are less than 10. And so so what's that value proposition? Why, as a president, to the whole point of your podcast, why are decision makers going to take that quote unquote risk? Why is it worth double what we could go out? And you say, well, we don't have any capacity. Okay, that may be the case for some institutions, but I still think there's a lot of 5, 6, 7, 8% money before you even get to the 10, or most numbers I'm hearing are 15 and above, as relates to even before, Karen, we're talking about exit or ownership, just the flat out what type of return that we want to get. So I think is it a bridge too far? I probably differ a little bit with Erik that I think someone will do it at some point because people are going to get so desperate and they're going to get a first mover deal or something like that. I do think it happens at some point. Where I really see is we'll continue to do what we have already done, right? We brought in hundreds of millions of dollars, probably now well in excess of $1 billion at the University of Kentucky in private capital. We call it equity that comes in without debt attached, that allows us to accelerate and serve more students, serve more fans, create better experiences. We're going to do development projects in and around Kroger Field. That is one. Sports adjacent property is going to be one of the things we're doing. As Erik mentioned, we're studying it now, and we will execute on that. Will we see if the market is interested in doing that? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But if those numbers are 12 or 14 and we can do it for 4 or 5, right? We got to be stewards. We got to have a fiduciary spirit of why we're willing or necessary to spend that much more. So I think about individual projects probably more than the whole development, but that's kind of, I think, what we see in most. And then lastly, I would say where we'll move is if there are models at the conference level. We all know the great conversation that's happening right now. And why is private equity interested in college athletics? They are very smart people. They are interested because they see an ability to either cut expense or grow revenue or both.
Yeah.
And the way to grow revenue is on broadcast. And so if they're able to get different agreements at 930 and 31 that are similar to what you see in the pro leagues versus the college leagues, that will be another push and a flow in that I do think we should expect to hear more conversations around.
So let me go back to what you just said, because I was going to ask you about this. Around Kroger Field, are you building an entertainment district or thinking about a stadium district? I know there's variations on that term, but what do you think might work there?
Yeah, and so we kind of follow a pretty regulated process, my turn. One, let's understand the market. So we took a team and traveled to about 6 or 7 sites this summer where we looked at the pros and we looked at what they're doing in Detroit, what they're doing in Chicago, what they're doing in Green Bay, and understanding Cleveland and so on. These sports adjacent properties, I think, is a lot of what we hear people talk about that term, fan entertainment districts, things of that nature. And so we have hired a design firm to come in and work with JMI Sports, work with a number of various consumers and customers and folks around this campus to understand what the market is, what may work in Lexington. Lexington's a city of 330,000 people, right? We're not a city of 1 million or 2 million people. We're not going to be that large. So what works here? I think there's a couple components you should expect to see. A hotel. I think that is going to be a component that we would likely see. I would think there's also going to be some type of sports related facility within that. Maybe that's practice facilities or things of that nature, even over and above what you have now. I think we are really interested in some innovation spaces, some research space, kind of a node to who we are, right? It's your institution or our institution and how the full scope of our really 4 missions, not 3 missions when you have healthcare. I think you also are going to see community spaces. We were really impressed with the ways in which the pro teams are being very successful getting their communities to come to their campuses, if you will, not just on a game day, but every day. That's something, town gown, we're always working and thinking about that. I see that as something to run to, not run away with. And you'll see then, the entertainment of restaurants, maybe bars and things of that nature within that zone. But we're going to follow a process. I'm just kind of giving you some early thoughts. We're going to see what works in Lexington, which may not work in a certain other area. And we'll do that in a judicious way, which means in a stepwise equation, not, build it all at one time. How do you develop it over time?
Okay, so then how does JMI Sports run with that? Let's say Erik decides, okay, this is what we're going to do for Kentucky. What's the next steps for JMI Sports? Yes, yes, yeah, gotcha, gotcha. As we wrap up our conversation, I'm going to ask each of you to think about what presidents should know about this space. What should they be paying attention to? And what questions might they be asking? I'll start with you, Erik, from Kentucky's perspective, higher education's perspective. What should they be paying attention to?
Yeah, a great question, Dr. Weaver. We in higher ed get really cautious when we use the term business, right? That can be that can be, and I'm fine with that in higher ed, if you will, right? I mean, there's degree programs that are not going to break even, right? We cross subsidize everything in higher education. We cross subsidize everything in athletics. But what is happening, and we have to accept it, and we have to figure out a way to utilize this as a friend and not a foe, is that athletics, college athletics, is a business.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure we're building leadership teams, that we are supplementing our great athletic directors with business oriented thinking so they can focus on what they do best. You know, it's this whole expertise argument. We talk about integration and centralization. How do we center expertise around what we know we need to do? And I think we all can do a better job of that. And as a university president, I would encourage those presidents to think about, how are we taking full advantage of the commercial opportunities? How are we supporting our athletics directors that are having to evolve maybe beyond what they've had to do over the last, and how do we support them in those journeys and those activities? How do we supplement those things? How do we deepen those partnerships? We're going to have to grow our revenue, but we also are going to have to be stewards of the expense side beyond, in my almost 30 years now, any time in college athletics. And so how do we do that? And how do we then learn for what's successful in athletics for the other parts of our business? You talked about how we've learned from healthcare. I think healthcare is always first. I think athletics is probably going to be second, and then higher ed is going to be third, and learning various things that can crowd down or crowd up how we're more successful. At the end of the day, we got to serve more and do more, right? We got to graduate more. We got to have students that are out there changing the world. We got to have fan experiences that feel connected to the place and show the value of college athletics. No offense to anyone else, is different. It's different than the pros. Let's run to that and take advantage of that. But those are some of the things, Dr. Weaver, I'd suggest presidents consider.
That's great. And from JMI Sports perspective, I know you said early on you believe in the front of the jersey, not the back of the jersey. So how can JMI Sports enhance that goal and that object? Yeah, 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 for sure. Yeah, yeah, I agree. And that's been one of the reasons why there's been such an effort to get clarity from Congress. And unfortunately, we don't seem to be getting very far along on that. I really want to thank you both. My goodness, this has been such an informative conversation. I think my students who don't know a lot about sports will get a lot out of this. If they're finance geeks, they'll get a real lot out of this conversation. Most importantly, I think you've added a lot to the public dialogue. So I'm grateful for both of you joining me today.
Thank you, Karen. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.